Hello, everybody. Um, my name's Stephen Mitchell and from the EPD Australasia, and welcome to our webinar today, which is titled Using Australasian EPDs in the Infrastructure Sustainability Rating Scheme. So we have three great speakers today and a Q&A as well. More people are coming in, but we'll have to get started. We've got a lot to get through. Um, So we'll be joined today by Ishan Jan, Tyrell Momberg, and Ross Brookshaw. Please use the chat function in the webinar if you've got any questions at all. By the way, this is being recorded and will be available after the presentation. So just a little bit about EPD Australasia. We're a joint venture between the Australian and New Zealand life cycle assessment associations, and we have a partnership with the international EPD system. And we're an EPD program operator in cooperation with them. And our EPDs follow international best practice, so ISO standards as well as the construction product EPDs all comply with the international European standard EN 15804. And you'll also see on all our construction product EPDs, the Eco Platform EPD verified logo, which is a sign of the quality assurance system that organisation runs through a lot of EPD programs. So our commitment is to quality, consistency, and transparency. So it's not just about the numbers, but it's the transparency that companies with EPDs sign on to when they get an EPD registered and published with us. And there's an increasing interest in the transparency of impacts within the supply chain, and also benchmarking, measurement, and reporting on a whole range of environmental impacts, especially embodied carbon. So EPDs themselves are credible third-party verified documents, and as we will discuss, they're embedded in a couple of important EPD rating tool, building and infrastructure rating tools policies. And just a bit of a boast, we've had a huge influx of EPDs over the last year or so. Now, largely a lot of concrete and concrete product EPDs. We're up to almost 3,500 EPDs in the EPD Australasia system. More widely, globally, there's over 130,000 EPDs for different products. So there's exponential growth in EPDs around the world. So with that, I will have our first speaker, Tyrell Momberg. Over to you, Tyrell.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Steve. If you could go on to the next slide, please. It's great to be here. Thank you very much, everyone. From my perspective, the agenda for today is just a brief introduction to the ISC. Then I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into the IS materials calculator and EPDs. And then lastly, just touching on some of the data that we're starting to get out of the MatCalc and the IS credits. Next slide, please. And again, next slide, just going to the next one. Thanks. I think probably most people would be aware of who the ISC is, but just for those of you that don't, we are a member organization. We're a not-for-profit. We're based across Australia and New Zealand, and we do a number of things, as you can see from the slide. So we host events and conferences across the countries, across the year. We publish thought leadership publications. We're a membership organization. We have a training and education department, but the most relevant item in terms of what we do for today's discussion is the IS rating scheme. It's a sustainability rating tool for infrastructure projects. Next slide, please. So the sustainability rating tool looks at the full life cycle of an infrastructure project, and it is across the quadruple bottom line. So it's across the governance, environment, social, and economic criteria and indicators. Really relevant for today's conversation is the carbon and energy credits and the resource efficiency, specifically as it relates to the ICE materials calculator. Next slide, please. Great. This slide is really just showing the impact that the ICE rating is having on the industry. 424 active and completed projects worth over $400 billion in terms of capital value. And already that's starting to show that the massive impact that the rating has on the industry. And then on the far right-hand side of the slide, it's showing where. So where it's happening in terms of infrastructure types. So across road, rail, port, airport, water, an increasing number of energy projects. Also then onto the kind of that middle column, where it's happening in terms of the different rating tools. The vast majority is still under the design and as-built rating tool, but there's an increasing number of projects participating under the planning as well as the operations tool. And then lastly, on that far right, is where it's happening geographically. So 33 projects in Western Australia, 57 in Queensland, 82 in New South Wales, 50 in Victoria, etc., etc. Next slide, please. Thanks. So now I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into the IS materials calculator and then into specifically how EPDs are used within the calculator. Next slide. Thanks. So just, one click, please. Thanks very much. So for those of you that don't know, the ISC has this document is called the IS materials calculator. It's a free resource for IS projects to use to model the impacts for their design and material selections and demonstrate how their actual materials are better than their business as usual base case materials. And when we say better, we probably mean better in terms of two ways. So better in terms of less material. So if you have intelligent design that just designs out quantities of materials. And then secondly, better in terms of the actual materials that you're specifying. So if they have less emissions and less impact, and this can be typically verified through an EPD. Projects enter the materials for their base case and then compare these to the actual case, and they're rewarded with IS points based on the percentage reductions between these. Next click, please. Thanks. So this is just going into a bit more detail in terms of how the actual usability. So from a user perspective, projects have to enter the product details for each of the major materials associated with their infrastructure project. So for example, asphalt, aggregates, piping, steel, etc., etc. What they do is they go into the particular product itself, typically clicking down and finding the product that they're using, and then entering the quantities associated with it, as well as the transport details. And then the calculator calculates the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the enviro points associated with each of these materials. Onto the next slide, please. Great. So now onto EPDs in the IS materials calculator. And there are two ways that EPDs are used in the MAT calc. The first, which is on the screen at the moment, is in the front end. So as a part of the user using the tool, they are able to directly enter the EPD details into the calculator as they go. And you can see that kind of red boxed area. Take the details from the EPD, type them into that, and then those details become a part of the calculation as they go. Next click, please. Great. So this is the second way. And this is now the back end of the calculator. And some manufacturers have chosen to have their product EPD built into the back end of the calculator itself. So you can see that red boxed example in that second image. Then from a user perspective, when users are operating in the front end, that then becomes part of the drop down. So as they're working through, they can click and select that product from the front end. Next slide, please. Great. So the IS rating tool also recognizes and rewards the use of EPDs in this credit, RSO7, separate credit, and it's all about sustainability labels. So projects get additional points for using products and materials that have sustainability or environmental labels like EPDs. So in summary, the ISC definitely recognizes the importance of EPDs and rewards their use in a number of ways. Next slide, please. There's also an increasing broader demand for EPDs beyond sustainability ratings. So some of you might be aware of the Infrastructure New South Wales and the Transport Minister's carbon measurement framework. And they list EPDs as the preferred emission factor source. And you can see that red box in that second image. And we are seeing more and more suppliers and manufacturers undertaking EPDs to respond to this demand. From our side, the ISC is working closely with Infrastructure New South Wales to understand how our IS MatCalc can be even more aligned with this framework. And the idea from both our sides, from our side and Infrastructure New South Wales, is to improve consistency across the industry in terms of how measurement and reporting is done, but also to reduce duplication of effort, so people don't have to be doing things again for the different tools and the different frameworks. Next slide, please. And on to the next one again, now onto data. So I just really quickly wanted to talk about the data that the ISC is getting from the materials calculator and how we are currently using it. Again, there's two ways. The first way is that we're looking at it cumulatively based on the projects certified within a particular financial year. And this is illustrated, for example, that first red box, the life cycle material emissions avoided, tons of CO2. And it's also through the circular economy outcomes. So things like RAP content, SEM content, recycled aggregate content, and then reductions from base case for asphalt and concrete and steel. And this is done, as I was saying, cumulatively, and we include these numbers within our impact report. And then onto the second click, please. This is a new thing that we started doing. So this is the second way. We started looking at also from a project-specific basis and from a financial perspective. So we've assigned a dollar value to the reductions and efficiencies. And if you look at that first red box, the life cycle materials emissions, now in dollars, what we've done is we've taken the dollars per ton of CO2 from the Infrastructure Australia recent report, and therefore been able to calculate a total dollar figure for this. We've done similar valuations for some of those other materials, and therefore are able to kind of work out an avoided cost in dollars. And we also are representing that cost as a percentage of CapEx to really show projects the types of savings that are achievable. We're really excited about this new kind of chapter in terms of using the data that we have available, and we look forward to bringing these and other insights to the market. That's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tyrell. We have a good couple of questions on the Q&A, so keep them coming through, but we'll keep those to the end. So we'll hear now from Ishan Jain, from Sustainability Advisor with BHP. Over to you, Ishan.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's BlueScope now, but yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Ishan, Sustainability Advisor at BlueScope. And today I will be talking about the benefits of EPDs, but from a manufacturer's perspective. In today's agenda, we will be talking about what kind of EPDs we have, why they are important for us as a manufacturer, but also why they are relevant to our customers as well. And in the end, I have some learnings and recommendations for all of you to take away from this session. Next slide, please. As you can see from the slide, EPDs are very important to us as manufacturers. Here is a snapshot of our EPD journey. BlueScope were early adopters of EPDs going back to 2015. What this says is EPDs have been here for a long time. There's a strong market signal for it, and it will keep on going. It will keep on increasing with time. Next slide, please. Here's a quick snapshot of our EPDs. We currently have 19 published EPDs, as I said, We published our first EPD in 2015, and the number has kept on increasing, and it will keep on growing as well. Next slide, please. In today's session, I will not go into a lot of detail on what an EPD is. I think we are fairly aware of what those EPDs are, but I will tell you why they are very relevant to us as manufacturers and to our customers as well. Next slide, please. So before going into what an EPD is, there are broadly three key types of environmental labels. On your left, you have stewardship schemes like responsible steel. In the middle, you have your type 1 eco label like green tag that certify a product against a defined environmental standard. And then on the rightmost side, we have type 3 labels, what we call environmental product declarations, which are based on life cycle analysis and are third-party verified. And they kind of communicate environmental impact of our products across the life cycle for a range of midpoint indicators, including the most relevant one for us, the greenhouse gas emissions. We also have type 2 labels, which are self-declared environmental labels, but we will not talk about it in today's session. Next slide, please. So EPDs are not just documents that disclose environmental impact of a product. For us as a manufacturer, they're very relevant documents. Firstly, they communicate the impacts of our product. They are a commitment to transparency regarding the environmental impacts of our products. They show complete information on multiple indicators. They have holistic representation of a product's environmental impacts. They also help in supply chain integration and collaboration. What I mean by that is they help our customers in the downstream to create their own EPDs, Scope 3 reporting. So they have a range of benefits in our supply chain integration process. They're also recognized internationally. That's very relevant for us. If you are a global manufacturer, you need EPDs that can transcend boundaries and can be used internationally as well. They help us in identifying improvement opportunities within our operation. Then again, it's a very critical part of our analysis. When we create EPDs, we collect data of all of our manufacturing processes in our supply chain. So it helps us do a hotspot analysis on where the impacts are coming in our manufacturing process. So creating an EPD is a very beneficial process for us as a manufacturer as well. And most importantly, it helps our customers make better decisions and tell their sustainability story. And at the end, it also helps contribute to rating tools like Green Star and IS rating tool. Now, I'll quickly touch on what exactly it takes to make an EPD. What are the key challenges we face when we make EPDs? Lifecycle analysis is one of the key tools we use to better understand the environmental impacts of our products across life cycle, from extraction of raw materials to manufacturing, use, disposal, or recycling of steel, as you can see from the image on the right-hand side. For making an EPD, we start with data gathering process. We need to identify, okay, what goes in, what goes out of our manufacturing process. What does the supply chain look like, as you can see from the image? When we have that thing mapped out, we start with the data gathering process based on the life cycle of our product. Then again, this is a very time-consuming and resource-intensive process. And depending on the complexity of data and the complexity of supply chain we have, it can take anywhere between 6 to 8 months to complete the entire process. Once we have that data, this needs to be validated, but can quickly become out of date with time. As we have process improvements, let's say we upgrade some part of our manufacturing process, the EPD expires. So we do invest a lot of time in collecting that data, but the data can still become out of date very quickly. After we have that information, we validate it, and an LCA model is created on back of it to calculate our impacts. The results are verified and then published in form of an EPD. One thing to note is different EPDs and different program operators have different rules. So even if we create EPDs, comparison between them can always be tricky. And obviously, if we have multiple EPDs, we do multiple rounds of data collection, validation, publishing, renewing those EPDs. This entire process is costly and time consuming. But the key part is we still publish EPDs and we will keep on doing so. Even though we have all these challenges, we still look towards publishing more and more EPDs. And why so? Next slide, please. Even if we have challenges, these EPDs are very beneficial to us as manufacturers and also to our customers in our supply chain. Next slide, please. EPDs are valuable documents. They support our customers in developing their own EPDs. I've given some examples on your left-hand side in your screen. We have EPD of Kingspan, Bondo, Rondo. So we have created our EPD. What our customers have done in our supply chain is used our data and created their own EPD. So it enhances supply chain collaboration and better visibility of downstream final products. It also helps in supply chain integration, as I said, Scope 3 reporting for our customers, both globally and locally. That, again, is a growing trend. It increases collaboration across supply chain, and it may also contribute to achieving credits under Green Star, IS rating, and other international rating tools. For our customers, I'll say it's a valuable piece of information, as many of you may be aware. It helps them reduce their impact, assess products, identify end-of-life opportunities using our declarations. Next slide, please. Are you already there? Now, from a supply chain perspective, there has been an uptake of Scope 3 reporting. And key focus of supply engagement for us is improving Scope 3 data quality and moving away from spend-based industry average emission factors in favor of supplier-specific data. And collecting primary data allows users to account for their suppliers' decarbonization effect in their own reporting, in turn allowing them to report their value chain reductions on a year-on-year basis. Also, one thing to note with the Scope 3 emission reporting requirements, EPDs are recognized in ESG reporting under the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Scope 3 standard. Companies can use supplier-specific data, that is, including EPDs, instead of, let's say, industry average emission. Factors when, it factors in when we are calculating Scope 3 Category 1 data based on purchased goods and services. And it also counts towards your SBTi targets as well. So in all, a very comprehensive document that is used by a lot of our stakeholders in our supply chain. Next slide, please. In terms of IS rating, our products are listed there, and it gives a detailed background of our products, the EPDs, and how you can use it in the IS rating tool. As Ty just showed the IS materials calculator, our products are also there, and you can easily help. You can easily use our EPDs to help make better decisions for your projects. Next slide, please. In the end, I want to give away some key learnings and recommendations for all of you to take away in your next project. I'll say making an EPD is just one part of the puzzle. I know it takes a lot of effort for us to make an EPD, but I want you all to consider these three key things in a project for a better sustainable outcome. Look at design and whole of life considerations. Think of dematerialization, think of reuse, think of circularity in your design in early on stage. Encourage system thinking and holistic sustainability, whole of life versus upfront carbon. Think of social impacts and social outcomes. And at the end, focus on product transparency and stewardship. Look for products that have EPDs, eco-labels, responsible steel, or other stewardship schemes they have, because at the end, it will help you make better decisions for your projects. Next slide, please. In the end, you can find our EPDs on our website. They can be also accessed through various websites like the EPD Australasia database, the International EPD System database, and obviously it will be on our website as well. So thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ishan. I particularly liked your, it was all very good comprehensive overview from a manufacturer's perspective, but I was particularly interested in that scope 3 use for your measurement and your data gathering. It's not just going into the EPDs, but it's being used
Yep.
in the scope 3 calculations for your customers and your corporate shareholders and investors, no doubt, as
Yep.
well. It's particularly important with mandatory climate disclosure for many companies in Australia and New Zealand. So thank you very much. We'll have times for questions after Ross's presentation. So I welcome Ross Brookshaw, Sustainability Manager for the M80 Ring Road Completion. So welcome, Ross.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I'm from the M80. We are part of a broader program of works called the Northeast Link here in Victoria, and it is the largest road project ever in Victoria. Our part is a Ashiona-led alliance with MACA and ACOM and MRPV as the customer. We have a KPI to use 40% by dollar value of materials with an environmental label. We preference EPDs, and I'll talk about why through my presentation. We've targeted steel, concrete, and asphalt because they're the three biggest things you put into a road, and it's where we can have the biggest impact. But we also have a limited budget where we help smaller, innovative suppliers onto our project produce EPDs, because we see a real value, similar to what Ishan was saying, that we can bring to the business. Similar to what Stephen was saying, we love the EPDs because it does truly provide that consistency, quality, and most importantly, transparency into our reporting that we then provide to our customer. And to be honest, there is still a little bit of misreporting of carbon savings or the true impact of products that get reported to us. And most of the time it is through that lack of knowledge, and we constantly send suppliers of us to EPD Australasia to find out what EPDs are like, so they can then refine their data capture and reporting for the next time. And I would like to declare, and I don't know if this is, it hasn't been said before, but it's not a perfect process, but as Ty said, it is definitely the number one thing we've got. And if we support the EPD process, we can consistently improve on your products, your reporting, and therefore our reporting to us. I would like to cover how we use the EPDs through our learning of your story. Through Victoria has a Recycle First policy, which links into RSO 1, which is material strategy. End of life calculations that I've been using it on this project in Energy 1, where we model our energy use, and then tree salvaging, how we recover some of that lost carbon. If you can go to the next slide, please, Stephen. I think by far the most valuable asset of these EPDs is the education to myself, my team, and those that are using the products. And there's no accident why I've chosen BlueScope as the example, because I truly believe that they do have the best description of what their products or the product life cycle is in their EPDs that we use as an education tool. So I can see their raw materials and where it's sourced from. I can see their manufacturing process to get to our site, the use phase, and then the final waste processing, recycling, or disposal streams. And it's at that point that we can start deciding, well, what is going to be the best product for our project. In particular, we'll be looking at, well, is it made in Australia? Is it supplying local Australian jobs? Or important for government projects is it really local? Can we use these products to keep Australians employed? The other part, which Ty has gone through a fair bit, is we plug the results into the materials calculator and we will compare products. As a caution though, we won't be generally comparing concrete to concrete or steel to steel. We'll be comparing concrete to steel, or asphalt to concrete, or concrete to glass fiber reinforced polymer. And it's not just material to material. We'll be looking at structures. So we'll be looking at the whole bridge. We'll be looking at the whole pavement depth, just to see the impacts of the materials we're providing. Do you want to go on to the next one, please, Stephen? Victoria has a recycle first policy that we respond to in each of our projects. And we pull data out of the EPDs to inform our strategy to respond to the recycle first plan. And the recycle first plan is we've integrated on our project the recycle first plan into RSO1 and RSO4. RSO1 being the strategy for materials and RSO4 being waste. So in the BlueScope welding beams and columns, I can pull out right now 17.4% on average is recycled. And from a circularity point of view, I can pull out the 90%. There's a recycling rate of 90% in construction or higher. We originally went down the path of trying to get MCIs. They're very limited in Australia at the moment, so we came up with our own circularity index for the time being, which is published in the ISC impacts report from last year, if you want to have a look at it and how we calculate circularity. But it does make it easier to have one number where we can compare the circularity of products. Through this process, though, I have discovered that BlueScope have spent last year refining their recycled content, which is now up to 25%. So the EPDs last for 5 years. It is definitely well worth talking to your suppliers as well to see if there is any changes, particularly with new technologies coming in that haven't made it into the renewed EPDs. Do you want to go on to the next one, Stephen? With version 2.1 coming onto the market, rating tool from ISC, there is a lot more onus on reporting your full scope of emissions in ENE1. So we do materiality assessments, and I have found that end-of-life emissions for the asset is substantial and included into our modelling. So I started off first principles, calculating the emissions of a welded beam and column, for example, but it was taking days, and contacting the supply chain to get those numbers was an onerous task. So for 10 minutes or less, I decided to use the C1 to C4 option of the EPDs, C1 being deconstruction and demolition that happens on our site, C2 being the transport, 2 waste processing, C3 being the waste processing, and C4 being waste disposal. Add those together, I've got my emission factor for steel leaving our site. So 10 minutes worth of calculation versus days. I think I know what I'll choose from now on, which means that I can concentrate on finding the best product and those efficiencies that Ty was talking about before. And the most important thing about this, though, is you've heard Ishan talking about the robustness of the data that he has used. And you've also heard about the independent verification. That data is a whole lot more robust than what I would be doing over days of work in my models. Do you want to go on to the next one, Stephen? And then finally, for this project, and for a lot of projects, you often clear a bit of vegetation. And we include that in our energy modeling as lost emissions from tree removal. So we're losing that carbon sink. However, there is a small portion of timber that gets salvaged and reused on the job or very, very locally. So this project, I used the hardwood timber EPD to add a bit of value in or offset some of those emissions that were previously gone in the model. The photos down the bottom are pure examples. They're not representative of our project, but we will be having on the far left, I think, for your screen, you can see nest boxes. In the middle is seating arrangements. And then you've got interactive playgrounds for kids. And then on the far right, you have indicators or markers. That's how we will be using the salvage timber on our site and locally within the local council area. So in summary, we have modeled the lost carbon from removing the trees, and I've added a very small portion back in for the salvage timber that we are reusing on our site. So we don't lose totally that carbon sink. There is a carbon sink still maintained. So just in summary, we have preferred EPDs on our project. In fact, it is mathematically preferred when you bid to us in our procurement process. If you have an EPD, you will definitely get more points towards being awarded. And sustainability for us makes up, I think, about 30 to 40% of the total mark for award. And we use those EPDs through the materials calculator, through our education, and through our Energy One modeling. So definitely a lot of value comes from that EPD process for us. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks very much, Ross. That was really, really interesting to see them used in practical projects and more sustainable decision making. I was particularly interested in, and we might have another, I think we've talked about this already, how we can use EPDs in better circular economy decisions. Your preference for material circularity indicator. I think there's about 14 or so EPDs now with those indicators in them. Laminex Australia just published a heap of EPDs with those MCI indicators. InfraBuild were the leader in that, and there's a couple of other companies that have included those indicators in their EPDs as well. So they'll be useful for you down the track. Trying to encourage more people to include those in their EPDs as well. So we're on to the Q&A section of the webinar, and we've got half a dozen questions through on the chat now, and we also had some questions come through when people registered. We might go through some of those first and then get to the ones that people have put in during the webinar. And this first question, we found that using EPDs for concrete sometimes result in lower environmental points, despite the improved greenhouse gas emissions factors, and compared to the either standard strength supplementary cementitious material percentages or specific mixed designs. And I'm not sure, Ty, if you wanted to have a go at that or we wanted to bring someone else in.
Yeah, I think I was going to leave it to the experts. So I was going to hand it over to Rob Red, who's our subject matter expert and helps kind of maintain the IS materials calculator and also helped build a lot of the back end. So I was going to hand this one over to Rob. Thanks, Rob.
Hi, Ty. Thanks for that.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Steve. Yes, having worked on the IS materials calculator and sort of looked at the I guess default options in there, there's a number of reasons why the results could go one way or the other. When you look at an EPD, it tends to be more specific, so there's more detailed information available, and that can mean that sometimes raw materials that are used come with specific impacts. So, for example, one example is that a particular use of an admixture and the data that are available for admixtures could result in a spike in a particular indicator, which then ultimately comes true in the IS Enviro points, which are a weighted measure of all the other environmental indicators in the EPD. So it's possible that you can see differences between the defaults in the IS materials calculator and an EPD, better or worse, and you can actually see the greenhouse gas emissions in the IS Enviro points going in different directions due to the underlying drivers. That's sort of the generic principle. I'm not sure if that's clear to people. You kind of have to understand a little bit more about the environmental indicators that are published in EPDs.
Well, I think that's enough for now. Rob, really thanks. Would you be able to answer this third question here about generic data validity within the EPDs and the IS rating scheme?
That's a very succinct question. Look, we as being everyone, I think, in the sector, including clients, including LCA practitioners and verifiers, prefer specific data where available. And when they're not available, we have to go to what we call plan B, which is generic data. And the validity of these will depend from material, will vary between materials. You know, in some cases, they're very good generic data available. In some cases, we revert to what's called proxy data, which is basically a rough estimate of what's happening. Always with the intention to use the best available data. But yeah, there's no single answer to that.
Just in answer to the second question, I'm assuming we can use, not sure who else asked this one, but ocean energy technology assessments. Not quite sure where that question's coming from, but you can definitely use it in sea-based infrastructure and technology. There's EPDs for wind farms, there's EPDs for solar farms, there's EPDs for nuclear power plants. So EPDs can be applied to a host of different types of infrastructure projects and equipment. Maybe this question 4, as a contractor conducting an ISC rating, what's the benefit of pushing EPDs over other sustainability labels from an RSO perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I can have a go at this one. I guess the first thing is I wouldn't say necessarily from the ISC's perspective that we're pushing anything. The ISC and specifically this credit is about rewarding. And overall, it's about rewarding projects for using products that have third-party verified labels, either sustainability labels or environmental labels. There is a difference in the points of sustainability labels. Look at more criteria. I guess it's not just environmental, it's beyond environmental, and then therefore there's more points associated with it. So I guess from our perspective, again, it's not about pushing anything, but it's just about rewarding and also recognizing the difference between something which looks at just environmental and other labels which look at beyond other factors, beyond just environmental considerations. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. This question 5, Ishan, maybe you could kick in here. From a business considering completing EPDs for various products, I'd like to understand more, including upfront costs and level of information required. You touched on that a fair bit, but you're a pretty complex manufacturing operation.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of making an EPD depends on the complexity of your supply chain. That's the first point. If it's a complex supply chain, the data value collection, as I said, for us, it takes anywhere between 6 to 8 months. So it's very comprehensive. A lot of people are involved in the process. But if you are a small manufacturer, you have a relatively simpler supply chain, this process and the cost can be reduced as well. And I think cost is one part. The initial cost of creating the model, getting the structure in place is high. But once you have, set things in set, where the inputs are, where the outputs are, things become more streamlined and cost can go down as well. But I like to highlight, as I said, the benefits of EPDs for our customers is far more than the cost. And even for us as manufacturers, we can do hotspot analysis when we are collecting the data to understand, okay, where we can reduce the impact. For our customers, not just in projects, for Scope 3 reporting, it's very valuable, not just for local, but international customers. They value EPDs for their Scope 3 reporting as well, because it helps them tell their sustainability story. So it's both sides of the equation. The more you do work on EPDs and you're, polishing your model, the cost will hopefully, go down with time.
Yeah. I know. I think you painted a really good picture there, Ishan, of how integrating your EPDs into providing value in other areas to the business. I think that's a consideration people have to take on board when they're considering the upfront cost. Now, this last question, Rob, you might want to jump in again, but it's an EN 15804, the latest version, A2 indicators. I understand IS rating still requires A1 indicators, but what's happening there, Ty or Rob?
I'll have a go first, and Rob can maybe add some stuff if he wants to. It's a great question, and it's something that we, as the ISC, have been thinking about for quite a long time. And we put a lot of time and effort and money into this. So we took this as a kind of an issue to our Sustainable Materials Technical Working Group, because from our and to try and evaluate what possible options were and what the best recommended pathway forward was. The TWG recommended that we needed to have a single calculator that could somehow recognize both +2 and +1 indicators at the same time, which is quite a big ask. Because it's not just carbon, it's all the other indicators at the same time too. So we spent time and money and effort and appointed a subject matter expert to go away and do that work, build that calculator, which has been done as a proof of concept. The thinking from our perspective then is that we wanted to launch it as a digital product. And we are still busy kind of talking to a number of possible partners at the moment in terms of just how we take that forward. However, there's some additional thinking going on at the moment, and this goes back to one of my slides that I pointed out earlier. It's with regards to that Infrastructure New South Wales and the Transport Ministers, their carbon framework, that work associated with that, and our need and desire to be as aligned as possible. So we're still working very closely with Infrastructure New South Wales to determine just how to take that forward. And that can shape how we go in terms of our materials calculator overall. So it's a bit of a complicated answer, but there's many moving parts at the moment, as probably many people would recognize. We have been thinking about it. We still are thinking about it, and we're also trying to take some more broader considerations into bringing to the conversation at the same time. Rob, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Don't think there's much I can add to that. I think you've worded it quite well, Ty. Thanks.
Good job. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. The Transport for New South Wales, I know Green Building Council, they're all integrating embodied carbon measures into their rating tools. And yes, we get harmonization in everything would be a blissful day. We'll get there. I've just got a couple more questions come through in the Q&A, and keep them coming through because we can address questions after the webinar's over as well. But question for Ross here from one of the attendees. How do you prioritise local employment or lower carbon products with the EPDs, Ross?
So with the lower carbon example, we'll use the materials calculator as plug in the each EPD that we're looking at from a materials point of view. But as I said before, we'll be looking at the whole of asset or whole of a structure together with the product. Local employment, I educate myself on the processes used by suppliers as they put them into the EPD to ask informed questions about the product supply chain from the supplier and how much of a local content there is. So the EPD itself doesn't give me that, but it gives me the education to be able to ask very informed and pointed questions to the supplier in those interviews.
Yeah, that's really good. When I was dealing with people helping develop EPDs, always said it's an opportunity to address assumptions which may be wrong out there in the marketplace. So it's a good opportunity to tell your supply chain story and get that verified and credible information out there. So that's good to see that getting used there. Here's another question for you there, Ross. Published EPDs might be updated while a project is still running. That's more likely for multiple year projects, of which you're involved with. How do you decide when to start using the updated version, with the rule changes and how that might affect the final global warming potential value, for example?
That is a very good question. We'll use because we have materials coming on through the 4-year project. We'll use the EPD as it applies to the materials coming onto the project generally. If it gets updated, we'll then update the EPD data in our materials calculator. And previously, I thought that it would only be a benefit to us. But if there is a PCR change, I'd probably bring in the contractual requirement that there's been a law change and maybe reset our KPI that's in the contract if it has that material change to us. That's my thinking on that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So maybe a couple of earlier questions we had when you were talking, Ty. What system do you use to calculate the base case for concrete grades and products?
Yeah, sure. So we don't do that. That is for the projects to do to calculate their own base case. But we do have a very set of requirements and kind of specifications around how they do that. In terms of they can't just make up any kind of business as usual assumption and then try and game the system. So there are rules and regulations set in place, and then that is also kind of checked previously by verifiers, third-party verifiers, and now that's coming internally into the ISC quality control team. So there are strict kind of rules and regulations and controls around that, so people don't try and make their base case so much worse so that any betterment would bring kind of substantial points. So there's a lot of rules around that process.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. And then we've got a couple of questions along the lines of how do EPDs get included in the back end of the IS calculator? Does it get
Yeah.
updated with new EPDs? Does it require input from materials suppliers?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, great, thanks. So the first thing is just reach out, contact us. We do have a process for that. At the moment, it's a bit ad hoc, as in we respond as and when people are requesting it. We do have a kind of a set process for how we go about it, and it is kind of third party checked and due diligence and all the rest. But there's no kind of automated or kind of proactive system yet. It's reactive. So if you are interested, please reach out, contact us, and we can definitely make it happen.
Thank you very much. Ishan, do you have any, was it as an easy process, or you've got pretty well integrated into the IS rating materials database calculator?
I mean, we have access. I mean, we have iSupply. I find it very useful for checking what kind of products and are there and how it's relevant to different IS rating, because I'm not fully aware of what kind of credits there are. So I think iSupply is a very good portal for checking different products and how it applies to IS rating tool.
Okay, thank you. One question here, which is always a curly one. How is biogenic carbon calculated in these project calculations? Rob, do you want to pop in maybe again?
Yeah, happy to discuss that. It's definitely complicated, and I don't think I can do a very good job of explaining that in half a minute here this meeting. But we had a very similar question recently pop up, and if you go on to the EPD Australasia website and look for the EPDs of semi-bitumen, we published a range of EPDs there, and they actually have a page towards the back that explains that issue. And it explains that there are two different global warming potentials and that they treat biogenic carbon differently. For the aficionados, one of them uses the 0-0 method, and the other one looks at where the sequestration and emissions actually occur. And if you compare those, you can get some very different results if you look at a partial life cycle, for example, cradle to gate only. So I would recommend to have a look at that page in the semi-bitumen EPDs for a bit more of a clarification on that.
Yeah. So it's fair to say the methodology in that space is still developing, but it's really good to see in the EPDs you've got a couple of different methods discussed there. So trying to advance things along. That's great. Okay, so we haven't got any more questions on the chat. Okay, just one last question. Since most customers only look for the numbers and metrics, can EPDs be just 1 or 2 pages to save producers time and money? Well, I can answer that one, is that there is a template available in the International EPD system and EPD Australasia for people to use. It doesn't have to be an elaborate marketing document. You can stick to the bare minimum, and increasingly people are doing that. If they're developing a lot of similar sort of products, that can be definitely that's something that the EPD programs are conscious of and trying to reduce money. But there's also mandatory considerations that they have to include in an EPD. So it's not going to be 1 or 2 pages. However, they are getting, a lot of them are getting smaller and more succinct as time gets on. Yeah.
Steve, just to add to that, I think it's also important that EPDs tell you what the manufacturing process is, what is the supply chain looking like. So people can make decisions not just based on one number, but looking at the holistic picture. Because we look at a lot of EPDs, numbers say one story, but we need to understand, okay, what the entire picture looks like, and assess product across its life cycle. So yeah, that is also important that we have relevant important information in EPDs.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ishan. So it's a more holistic decision and a systems-based decision like you were talking about in your presentation. And I think, Ross, you've emphasized that as well with your circular economy considerations and local jobs and local economy decision making. So it's one more piece of the piece of information in decision making. Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, we might end it there. Just one last slide before people pop off is just please save the date. We've got EPD half-day summits coming up in Sydney on Tuesday, 15th October, and in Melbourne on the Wednesday, 16th of October. The recording of this webinar will be available on our website shortly. If you have any questions, please email Kelly at the email there, or look on our website, book an appointment to talk to her, or contact us via the website. With that, I'll thank you very much to our presenters, Ross, Ty, and Ishan today, and Rob for popping in. Thank you very much for your expertise. Keep an eye out for other webinars in our series, but hopefully see you at the half-day summits in October. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you, Ross. Thanks, mate.
Even see you.